At a bustling city train station, a beggar struggled to survive each day by asking passengers for money. Every day, he walked through the train carriages, holding out his hand in hope that strangers would offer him some spare change to stay alive. One day, as usual, he was begging when he encountered a tall, well-dressed man in a refined suit. The beggar thought, surely this man is wealthy. If I ask him, maybe I'll get more money. But when he reached out, the man asked, "Is begging all you know how to do? Have you ever given anything to anyone?" The beggar was surprised, then answered honestly, "I'm a beggar. I have nothing to give. I only know how to ask others for help." The man shook his head and said, "If you have nothing to give, then you have no right to receive. I am a businessman, and I believe in the principle of exchange. If you can give me something, I will give you something in return." With that, the man boarded the train and left. The beggar was left pondering those words and slowly began to realize that in order to receive, one must first learn to give. After the tall man left, his words echoed in the beggar's mind. If you have nothing to give, you have no right to receive. The beggar spent the whole day thinking about it. He felt that there was truth in those words. Perhaps people never gave him much because he never gave anything himself. But he was still a poor man with nothing of value to offer. He asked himself, "What can I give when I have nothing but empty hands?" For 2 days, he searched for the answer, but found no direction. On the third day, sitting near the train station as usual, his eyes caught sight of some wildflowers blooming brightly near a bush by the tracks. An idea suddenly struck him. Why don't I pick these flowers and give them to those who help me? Immediately, he felt it was a wonderful idea, perfect for his situation. From that day on, he picked fresh flowers each morning. When someone gave him some change, he smiled and handed them a flower in return. Though a small gesture, it brought joy to both giver and receiver. Many were surprised and touched, keeping the flowers as a meaningful gift. Gradually, more people started giving him money, not out of pity, but because they enjoyed receiving the beautiful flowers. The beggar began to feel that he was no longer just a beggar, but someone who created value and offered something beautiful in return. Understood. Here's the text exactly as you provided it, with no additions. One day, as he walked through the train carriages with a bag of flowers, he suddenly recognized the tall man from before, the one who had changed his life. Without hesitation, he approached him, held out his hand, and smiled. "Today I have flowers to give you, if you give me some money." The man smiled, took out his wallet, handed the beggar some money, and accepted the flowers. He said with satisfaction, "Wonderful. You've become a businessman. You give and receive. You understand the principle of exchange." Those words moved the beggar once again. On his way back, he kept thinking about them. "I'm a businessman. I'm not a beggar anymore." For the first time, he saw himself differently. Not as someone seeking pity, but as someone who could offer value and deserved to be rewarded. When the train stopped, he stepped off with shining eyes and a heart full of hope. Looking up at the sky, he shouted, "I'm not a beggar. I'm a businessman. I can be rich." People around him looked puzzled, some thinking he'd gone mad. But he knew he had just discovered the key to change his life. From that day forward, he was no longer seen at the station. He left with a new dream, carrying determination and belief in himself. That fateful encounter didn't just change how he lived, it transformed who he was deep inside. Got it. Here's your text, exactly as provided. 6 months later, at the same train station, two well-dressed men were waiting for the train. They happened to see each other, and one walked over, extended a handshake, and asked, "Don't you recognize me?" The other shook his head. "I think we're meeting for the first time." The first man smiled and said, "No, we've met twice before, and today is the third time. I'm the beggar who once asked you for money on the train." The man was astonished and gradually recalled. "Ah, now I remember. You're the one I told to learn how to give before expecting to receive. And the second time, you gave me flowers instead of just asking for money. But today, you look completely different. Where are you headed?" The former beggar's eyes shone brightly. "I'm now a flower merchant. I'm traveling on business to expand my trade." He continued, "Since the day I understood the value of giving, I no longer saw myself as a beggar. At first, people gave me money out of pity, but later they began to buy my flowers. Your words changed how I saw myself. I used the money I earned selling flowers on the train to invest in growing and selling flowers. People here love flowers, and that helped me succeed." The two men smiled, shook hands warmly, and boarded the train together, talking about business opportunities along the way. The story of the beggar is now a living proof of how thinking differently can transform a life. The tall businessman wasn't just a passerby, but someone who gave the beggar a golden key, a powerful reminder that no one can keep receiving without ever giving. From that moment, the beggar changed his mindset. Instead of seeing himself as helpless, he found a way to create value, even something as small as a flower. But that small act brought joy and emotion to others, and that emotion made them give more than just pity. He realized an important truth. People weren't just giving him money, they were paying for the value he brought: fresh flowers and a sincere smile. When he stopped seeing himself as a beggar and began seeing himself as someone who could give, his life truly changed. The story teaches us that success isn't about circumstances, it's about mindset. If you always think of yourself as small and weak, you'll never rise. But if you change your mindset, believe you have something to give, even something small, that's the start of transformation. Success doesn't begin with greatness. It begins with a thought, an action, and belief in yourself. Remember, when you start to give, you begin the journey of receiving, not just material things, but also respect, joy, and transformation. The beggar who became a businessman is a powerful example of how mindset and self-perception can change a life. In the past, he thought he could only survive by asking for pity. But after hearing one sentence, "If you have nothing to give, you have no right to receive," his mind awakened. At first, it was just wildflowers from the roadside, but with sincere kindness, he began to give. That small act changed how people saw him. No longer just a beggar, he became someone who offered something beautiful. After the second meeting with the businessman, he realized a deeper truth. Successful people create value and trade fairly, not live off others. The money people gave him wasn't charity, it was payment for the flowers he provided. And now, he was no longer a beggar, but a real entrepreneur. The most powerful message in this story is, think big and you will become big. When he saw himself as poor, he didn't dare to dream. But once he changed his mindset, dared to give, and saw himself as valuable, his life turned around completely. Success doesn't come from a high starting point. It comes from the right mindset, consistent action, and self-belief. Here is your text exactly as you provided, with no changes or additions. The story ends with a powerful message. Success lies in how we see ourselves. The beggar, once empty-handed, transformed his life with one idea, because he opened his heart and changed his thinking. The businessman didn't give him money, but something far greater, a principle of life, the law of giving and receiving. It's not just a business rule, but a truth of life. When you give, even something small like a smile or a flower, you create value, and that value will return to you in meaningful ways. At first, the beggar thought he was just returning the favor with flowers. But gradually, people gave not out of pity, but because they appreciated what he offered. That change in mindset led to a change in action, and ultimately, in destiny. The story shows clearly, if you always see yourself as small, you'll never reach anything great. But when you begin to think big and act with value, the world will see you differently. What matters is not where you are or what you have, it's what you believe about yourself. If you believe in your value and start giving, even in small ways, then even if you're poor today, you can be successful, respected, and useful tomorrow. The story ends with a priceless lesson. Success begins in your mind. The beggar once thought he had nothing to give, but once he changed his mindset, he found value in himself, even in roadside flowers. By bringing small joy to others with his flowers, he received not just money, but also respect, connection, and pride. He was no longer surviving on pity, but creating value and being rightfully rewarded. The important thing wasn't how good he became at selling flowers, it was that he dared to think differently about himself. When his mindset changed, so did his life. And he realized that people weren't just giving money, they were paying for the gift he brought. The story also tells us, every journey of change begins within. No one is born successful, but anyone can become successful if they unlock their inner potential. With the right mindset, a small action, and strong belief, you become someone different. Never see yourself as small or inferior. Learn to recognize your own value, dare to give, and start with small things. When you change your thinking, the world will change how it sees you. And like that beggar, you too can become a great businessman in your own path, if you believe in yourself.